Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be carrying on with October's exceptional story, The Exile's Chalice. Oh, and apparently I have a pop-up reminding me that Chapter 4 of Evolution has just been released, which I know nothing about. If anyone would like to tell me about that, I'd be greatly appreciated. But, without further ado, the air is wet and heavy. Droplets of sweat form on the Morbid Archaeologist's forehead. The screeching orchestra of the jungle is stifling. An entire bestiary within arm's reach. Minutes pass and stretch under the humid canopy. The Morbid Archaeologist has procured another scrap of driftwood and begins to coax a new form from its knots. Their face is calm, but the twitchy way they flick their knife back and forth across the grain betrays their nervousness. There is no sign of any contact, and a distressing proliferation of other, unknown life. We can either talk to the Morbid Archaeologist, conversation may make the wait, however long it is, pass more quickly, and there is plenty about your companion that you still do not know. Or we can pass the time in silence, being stranded in the wilderness of a foreign nation, waiting for a stranger who or may not appear, does not put you in the mood for conversation. Let's talk to the Morbid Archaeologist. They look grateful for the distraction. Thank you for heeding my warning about the gracious. The Prester rarely looks outside the bounds of his kingdom, and so the Neath forgets the power of his fist. The Morbid Archaeologist moves too quickly with their knife and scores a deep gouge down the flank of their scrap of wood. But you should not mistake placidity for weakness. The Presbyterate has been gathering strength since before your city was a twinkle in the bazaar's eye. Myriad felt that power. We might too. Their knuckles are white. Hands have stilled their whittling. Whatever motivates the Morbid Archaeologist, it is more than professional interest. A warning and a slip of the tongue. A twig cracks and the birds quiet, and the Morbid Archaeologist is on their feet like a rearing viper, hand whipping towards their empty belt. Without word or look, they have positioned themselves between you and the noise. And then, from the inscrutable jungle darkness, a low and purring chuckle. Peace, peace, my friend. It is only me. Smoke wafts from the undergrowth, and with it, the smell of hookah, fruity resin, and tobacco. The archaeologist relaxes, and a scraggly, silver-haired tiger lopes out of the tree line. Let's greet the striped smuggler. After exchanging very small, very careful nods with the Morbid Archaeologist, the old tiger turns her attention to you. So, he purrs, you are the sorry fool conscripted to join our knights-errant's quest for the Chalice of Myriad. It is not a question. Her tail whip cracks in amusement. I am to be your shabby hierophant. Welcome to the cove of the somnolent eye. What is this place? If this is a rival court to the wakeful eye, then it is down on its luck indeed. She laughs again, low and throaty, halfway between a purr and a growl. This is a shameful underbelly of a nation. Our nation. The resplendent court of the wakeful eye, whose hospitality you have so much enjoyed. Her fangs are remarkably sharp and upsettingly visible. The allegiance is a funny thing. As tigers we have many. To reality, to the banded prince, and our feline brothers and sisters. And yes, to the Prester too. Who is to say which bond trumps which? Here the wakeful eye is not watchful. and certain necessities can be performed. Can we ask her about the Morbid Archaeologist? How do they know each other? And why is your companion so intent on the Chalice? The Morbid Archaeologist stands on the beach, as if watching for the distant glint of ships. The smuggler hums, her nostrils flaring. Many people from your fallen cities search for treasure, for immortality. Yellow eyes bore into you, as if she can sense the pin that marks you a member of the Dillman Club. In the continent, we have less need for it. Our mutual friend, their motivation is stranger, sadder, grief, perhaps, or guilt. She stretches, yawns, sinewy muscles rippling, some pitiable human emotion. But to answer your question, I procured for them various meridian artifacts half a lifetime ago, and they have been fair in their dealings with me, where many are not. The striped smuggler has padded just beyond the tree line to a pool of still, black water, and is lighting incense around its perimeter. The dark reflection of the jungle's canopy wavers on its surface. Let's attend to the smuggler's pool. It is unclear exactly how a puddle will help you sneak onto a heavily guarded island. The smuggler clearly relishes the opportunity to flaunt her knowledge. Some background is necessary for the extent of my craft to be appreciated. Meried was condemned to sink by the Presbyter for breaking one of his sacred laws. The Queen staved off the Prester's justice for a while, longer than many thought possible, but not forever. It was taken by the deepest Z. Even now, risen again, it bears the Pelican signatures of almost death and almost dream. And so, tempting as the former may be, you shall reach it via the latter. I have constructed a tunnel to Meried on the backs of whales' dreams, the lightless lands on the fridges of the parabola. It is exactly as difficult as it sounds. The striped smuggler's veil of showmanship drops, and she inclines her head towards the archaeologist. I would be grateful if they returned alive. She makes a sentimentality sound, like a threat. Whatever pretense they use to bring you here, make no mistake, you are witness and confessor. Let's have a look at the archaeologist's hesitation. The Morbid Archaeologist stares out across the Z, the smuggler's pathway to Meried throwing aquatic ripples onto the canopy behind them. The lives of the Meridians should be remembered, celebrated. Their powers were, real. But the gracious, the Prester, seeing their ships has brought it all back. Can we really stand against them? Your choice here will affect the Morbid Archaeologist's outlook. Okay, we have 4 options. We can contend that the gracious may be reasoned with. If the striped smuggler has revealed anything, it is that the Presbyterate is not all one-minded. Despite being the Prester's agents, the gracious may be amenable to your cause. We can reassure them that we will find the Chalice first. What military force could rival your archaeological prowess? The Presbyterate has brought weaponry to the battle of wits, and wit shall win the day. We can assure them that though you might fail, it is important to try. The preservation of knowledge is a worthy cause. Meried, now that it has been found, should not be lost again. Or we can just admit that the Presbyter's forces did seem overwhelming. It is simple mathematics. They are legion in a living fleet of gold. You are 2. The equation does not balance favourably. Let's go with... We'll find the Chalice first. Our battle of wits A muscle in the corner of their jaw twitches as they grit their teeth. You're right. The Presby's dismissal of Meried will work in our favour. The continent knows nothing of Meried's wonders, of its history. While the gracious comb the city from top to bottom, we shall be focusing on the sites of specific archaeological interest. They take a deep breath and straighten the faint slope of their shoulders. Let's go. I've waited long enough. It's time to see Meried. Anything new with the striped smuggler? No. Okay, well let's go into the reflecting pool then. The striped smuggler puffs great clouds from their hookah. Smoke settles on the pool like a film, shoring up the placid surface to a glass-like texture. Candles flicker around the periphery. Burnt wick mingles with hookah smoke, scenting the air like the dream of an imagined fruit. "And are you ready?" he purrs. "Yours is not the only road I must open today, you know." Let's step into the reflecting pool. It seems to lead down into forever, a tunnel into Pelegin dark. The Morbid Archaeologist nods. The water doesn't ripple as your foot passes its threshold. It doesn't feel like anything but empty air. And then you're falling through a vast, watery shaft. Hookah smoke swirling around you, forming a barrier to separate you from this forsaken and lightless corner of the Isnot. These are the dreams of the drowned and inhuman, those beasts for whom the water's surface is naught but myth. But myth. None who breathe may linger here. And then the smoke is in your lungs, working them like a pair of bellows as the breathless dreams gather and shoal around you. The bubble protecting you from the suffocating dark shrinks and shrinks and pops. You are sitting in a puddle, and the Morbid Archaeologist gasping next to you. With shattered spires and crumbled domes rising towards the roof all around. Meried. We got a final breath. Interesting. Air rushes into your lungs. You are not where you were. Towering spires and cracked, moss-carpeted slabs, crumbling archways and coral incrustations, vines and trees and riotous flowers. Meried is overwhelming. A church the size of a nation, a forest in the shape of a city. A numerous ruin. The Morbid Archaeologist is agape. We made it. Their enraptured breath catches as the bright light carves across their face. Footsteps echo from across a fractured plaza. Awe freezes into terror. The gracious are already ashore. The puddle beneath you is nothing but a puddle. There is no going back, but the marching gracious are fast approaching. The gracious are conducting their own search for the Chalice. Most activities on Meried will attract their bright attention. Avoid or mislead them to reach your goal first. So we have two options. We can either hide amidst the ruins. The fallen masonry and abundant greenery provide ample places to conceal a body or two. Hiding is a safe but passive choice. It will make the archaeologist more pessimistic about your chances. Or we can distract the gracious and flee. It would be easy enough to hurl a chunk of masonry and sneak off in the other direction. Taking action will make the archaeologist more optimistic about your chances. Well, I like optimism, so let's distract the gracious and flee. A chunk of orphan stone tracery possesses a pleasing heft, and you hurl it across the fractured plaza. Threading the needle of undergrowth and precipitous ruins, it lands far away with an echoing crack and skitters wildly off into a shadow. The gracious halt their approach, and you glimpse their head-dressed splendour. Their raiment imparts a saintly aspect, kindly and fierce, the beneficence of a predator who could eat you, but will not. Leading them is the brightest light of all, a radiant exemplar of grace. He smiles as he ushers this land into the Presby's fond embrace. The radiant exemplar's rich, deep voice barks orders in a tongue you do not recognize. Footsteps hasten, and ranks of soldiers rush to search an overgrown ruin far from your position. The morbid archaeologist breathes out in relief and signals the opposite direction with an intricate hand signal. That was close. Tread carefully, you are not alone here. Let's go to the ruins of Meried, broken spires and crumpled sepulchres, creeping vines and house-sized flowers, cellars twinned with great arboreal roots, shattered domes with pelts of vibrant moss. Meried is a verdant, broken wonder, a tiered miracle of botany and hewn stone stretching up towards the false stars and down towards the ink-black Z. Somewhere in all this risen splendour, the Exile's Chalice, the font of a nation's power. We have an option here to look to the Morbid Archaeologist. They're the specialist on meridians. Where should you start in all this ruined grandeur? Or we can explore Meried. What other secrets might this overgrown ruin cradle in its broken heart? This will not progress our investigation, but let's see what happens. Here, a domed ceiling lies cracked on the moss, the broken eggshell of a painted world. Its frescoes are seeding slow ground to the creeping green. Can I try again? The floors and walls of this manor tilt at fair ground angles, where the ground beneath has given way. Fragrant ferns loll through empty windows. Yellow roses bud through the gaps in cracked tiling. Try again. Many of these ruins are nothing more than rubble, recognizable only as the trellises of Meried's proliferation of vegetation. Burrs of apples hang from branches draped over masonry. Reeds and grasses burst from shattered paving. One more time. Here, a flying buttress still stands, buttressing nothing but empty air. Lush vines curl around the cavern's stonework in many flowered heliaces. Okay, let's look to the Morbid Archaeologist. The Morbid Archaeologist pulls out a notebook, flicking through pages filled with delicate sketches of artifacts and rubbings of fragmentary carvings, until they reach a rough map. I believe it is likely that the Chalice of the Meridians is hidden in one of three places: the Palace of Vows, the Garden Cathedral, or the Black Embassy. Their finger traces the map with each name, dark eyes flicking to the horizon to cross-reference landmarks with their deductions. All of Meried is now open to you. Information about the Exile's Chalice may be found in each location. Some leads may point you towards other places. Once you've uncovered enough clues, the story will progress. Oh wow, yeah, we have a few places to go. Is the ruins of Meried where I just was? Yes, it was. Okay, so we have the verdant chapel. Fruiting branches and wild shrubs pave ruined way to Meried's ruined cathedral. The Palace of Vows. The promontory that bore the great palace of Meried must once have made these royal halls the highest point in the kingdom. Or the Black Embassy. The building the archaeologist calls the Black Embassy is anything but. A dazzling facade of white marble half submerged where the city meets the Zee and held together by grasping vines. And we can also talk to the archaeologist here, a conversation amidst the ruins. When you pause for rest or halt in your search to avoid running into the radiant patrols of the gracious, the morbid archaeologist retrieves their whittling from a pouch, turning it over in their hands as if searching for a glimpse of what it might become. Let's start at the verdant chapel and see what we can find. Rooting branches and wild shrubs pave way to Meriad's ruined cathedral. The ground is torn and ragged, held together by climbing plants and grasping roots. They say the chapel was built to honour the sacrifices of the first king and queen of Meriad. The morbid archaeologist kneels to inspect the root-racked stonework. They seem reluctant to touch the holy structure, as if part of the Merian's congregation. The golden ships of the gracious twinkle at Zee like reflected false stars. Let's piece together narratives from stained glass remnants. Once, panes of coloured glass must have cast the greenery and colours of Meriad's myths. Now what remains is scattered across the roots and flagstones. You find traces of the gracious passage as you gather fragments of window. Feathers, heavy footprints in the moss and mud, fresh breaks and cracks in rock. Your rivals are not so far away as you might like. The morbid archaeologist produces a pick and a miniature brush, carefully cleaning shards of vibrant glass. They prove adept at the task, and before long you have reconstructed a smattering of half-images from windows all around the chapel. They all depict the same woman. In some, she is depicted with feathers, as if alighting on the earth for the first time. In some, she is sprouting leaves and flowers. Here, water flows from her cupped hands. In all depictions, she is recognizable by the determined set of her jaw, her regal pose, and inelusible tenderness of gaze. The first queen, the archaeologist drinks the images in. Okay, the next option here in the verdant chapel is we can reveal a cavern tympanum? I don't know what a tympanum is. A tympanum is a semicircular or triangular decorative wall surface over an entrance, window, or door, which is bounded by a lintel and an arch. Seems like it fits. The pillars supporting this pedimental sculpture have collapsed. It languishes on the flagstones beneath a carpet of moss. The details may be intact. The sculpture depicts a feminine figure tipping a brimming chalice into the mouth of a waiting lover. At her feet, and anywhere the liquid falls, delicate traceries of plant and root are carved into the stone, revitalizing her partner and her blasted land at once. The first queen is radiant and deific. Her lover drinks thirstily. You graze the stone with your fingers. The sculpture has made the first king skeletally thin. The morbid archaeologist's voice contains a thin note of triumph. See? Powers to rival the Prester. This knowledge could topple the whole continent. We had one more thing to do here. We can climb to an intact stretch of fresco. A particularly pugnacious tree has wound through the fragmentary stonework of the chapel's apse, lifting great hunks of ornamentation in its branches. There are traces of prior ascent in this tree, new tears in the bark, muddy residue from soldiers' boots. Gracious have been here. You follow their trail up to a colossal fragment, the domed apse. It depicts a winding train of people walking from a bright, distant mountain to the Zee. Paint and plaster has flaked away, iconography replaced by cracks and lichen. But the first king and queen are just discernible, leading their peoples out of the continent. The Morbid Archaeologist has found an intact scrap of inscription and exhales a sharp breath of disbelief. The exiled daughter is cast out of her father's land to fond a kinder light? What could induce a daughter of the Presbyter to leave the idyll of her father's realm? What is it they always say? Look to love. The Morbid Archaeologist points to the first queen, hand in hand with her king, and looks wistful. Perhaps it can even conquer the deaths of kingdoms. Over there on the altar, what's that? Oh. Identify a telling absence. We have indeed. The Morbid Archaeologist is running their fingers over the recesses in a fractured altar. Something important is kept here. They flick through their notebook. I've seen this altar before, they say. A scroll I obtained from a private collection. They land on a page with a pencil sketch. The altar in the drawing is less fractured, less overgrown, but is unmistakably the same. In the drawing, a woman, the first queen, is placing an ornate vessel on the altar in the same spot worn smooth by something's repeated seat there. Whatever was in that tabernacle was holy to the Meridians. The Morbid Archaeologist taps the page. It could be the Chalice. Perhaps we should search the palace. Can I talk to him here? Have we unlocked anything new here? Oh wow, we have quite a few options here. Okay, let's ask about their whittling. It appears in their hands whenever there is a moment of rest, and the roaming gracious are far enough out of mind. They turn the wood over in their hands. There is something about physical objects that makes the past real. I like to be able to hold history in my hands. It's reassuring, grounding. They make a rueful face. But some things should not be taken from where they are found. Some artifacts are sacred. Others need preservation, controlled conditions. The past is not my treasure to plunder, so I make little replicas. They shrug and turn their face down towards the half-finished carving, suddenly embarrassed. It's just comforting, I guess. Can we ask about their past? What has driven them to pursue archaeology in such dangerous conditions? The Morbid Archaeologist turns their whittling over in their hands. I'm older than I look, you know. Most people from the Elder Continent are. We've lived through the Neath's myths. We remember what no one else does. It is clear they are avoiding the question, but the depth of their feeling is equally evident. And then, our ruling power, the Presbyterate, runs the Mythendrake office, an institution that has made an art of inventing false truths and rewriting histories. What might we achieve if we allowed ourselves to know the truths of the past? How can we stop ourselves repeating history's mistakes if we are not permitted to know what they were? A fair point. Let's ask about Myriad. Why are they so interested in this obscure and ancient kingdom? Not obscure, they shoot back, just old. In its day it was a jewel, a forbidden city off the Carnelian coast, a place that managed the impossible. Myriad defied the will of the Presbyter and prospered. The Morbid Archaeologist allows themselves the overstatement. Until it didn't, of course, but for a while it blazed. The wonders of the continent without the tyranny of the Presbyter. Their whittled miniature is a bird this time, wings outstretched in flight. And then, everyone forgot. I'm sure the Mythendrake office had a hand in that, but often forgetting is just due to time. They blow shavings from the miniature pinion feathers. I just want us to remember. What are your plans for the Chalice? If you find it, what happens then? For a moment, the Morbid Archaeologist's eyes glimmer with amusement. My plans always stopped at finding it. The Gracious will destroy it, or take it back to the Presbyterate. That is what I want to prevent. I don't want to use it. I don't want to live forever. This concept is apparently funny, and they bark a wry chuckle. I don't even want to remove it from Myriad. I don't want to simply be the most successful looter. I want... They pause, as if considering what they do want for the first time. I want people to come here, to visit, to live. I want Myriad to be remembered, to continue. I know I promised you treasure, they say, meeting your eyes. But if we find the Chalice, I hope you'll allow me to do what I must to keep it safe. We check in on their outlook. Little in their solemn face or dark eyes betray them. How do they feel? It is beautiful still, even like this. Their eyes roam over Myriad's crumbled, verdant splendour. You may think me foolish, but I still believe that the Chalice is here, and that we will find it. A note of grim determination creeps into their voice. The Gracious must not succeed, and if all we accomplish here is to stymie the Presbyterate, so be it. We do have an inquiry about our next move. Where do they think we should look next? The Morbid Archaeologist has their notes open in front of them as they whittle. There are still places we haven't looked. If the Chalice's tarbuncle isn't at the Verdant Chapel, then it could be at the Palace. The Palace of Vows has more to show us, and we haven't fully explored the Black Embassy. Okay. Well, before I go look at the Palace of Vows, I think I'm going to have to end the episode here. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Your comments are greatly appreciated. And as always, I'll see you next time.